Former Governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, Mark Carney, is set to step into the role of Canada's new Prime Minister, replacing Justin Trudeau, who announced his resignation in January this year. And interestingly, he will be the only second Prime Minister in the country's history without a seat in Parliament. Here's more.
There's someone who's trying to do the opposite.
There's someone who's trying to weaken our economy.
Yeah. Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, as we know, has put, as the Prime Minister just said, unjustified tariffs on what we build, on what we sell, on how we make a living.
Nous gagnons nos vies.
He's attacking
Il s'est attaqué
Canadian families,
aux travailleurs,
workers,
aux familles et aux entreprises canadiennes.
Cannot let him
et on ne peut pas le laisser faire.
And we won't.
Est allé de l'avant avec ses mesures de représailles. Nous avons nos propres tarifs. Cela aura une incidence importante aux États-Unis avec peu de répercussions ici au Canada. Nous maintiendrons ces tarifs jusqu'à ce que les Américains...
I think only time is going to, tell. Ultimately, it'll be in an election campaign where the Canadian voters will decide, which vision they want for the future of Canada and for the leadership that they would like for their families, for Canada's economy, for Canada's workers, because of the number of challenges. So I think that, when you're in the political world, a day is a lifetime in politics, and party fortunes, change day in and day out, and ultimately it'll be the Canadian voters that will decide who will be elected as Canada's next government to lead it into the coming years.
Justin Trudeau's handling of India-Canada relations has left a diplomatic, economic disaster in its wake. Now, Mark Carney steps in with a bold promise to rebuild the crucial trade ties Trudeau shatters, he claims. But can Carney indeed fix what Trudeau broke? Will India trust Canada again? Here's a report.
This Canadian leader, Mark Carney, has vowed to rebuild Canada's strained trade ties with India, a relationship that crumbled under the Trudeau government. Speaking in Calgary, Carney said he will rebuild the trade partnership with India, calling it crucial to diversifying Canada's economy. He added that a shared sense of values would be key to this commercial relationship, signaling a major reset after years of diplomatic chaos. And Carney may just be the right man to clean up Trudeau's mess. Until January this year, he was chair of the board at Brookfield Asset Management, a global investment firm that holds over $30 billion worth of assets in India. Carney has seen firsthand the potential of India's economy, and now he wants Canada to capitalize on it. But Carney is walking into a disaster Trudeau left behind. In 2023, Justin Trudeau accused India of being involved in the killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. What followed was a diplomatic disaster. Trade talks were frozen, diplomatic ties nosedived to say the least, and any hope of any trade deal vanished. Trudeau's handling of the crisis didn't just cost Canada politically, it cost the country billions in potential trade. Under his government, India, one of the world's fastest growing economies, turned its back on Canada. And now Carney is promising to fix what Trudeau broke. His promise has already drawn praise from Canadian business groups who see Carney's global experience as a chance to restore economic ties with India. But fixing the damage won't be easy. With Donald Trump threatening to slam Canada with heavy tariffs, Carney's first few months in office could be defined by two urgent tasks: protecting Canada's economy from Trump and salvaging what's left of the country's relationship with India. Restoring this critical trade partnership could unlock billions in economic potential, reshaping Canada's global standing and economic future. But if he fails, it would cement Trudeau's legacy as the man who destroyed one of Canada's most promising global partnerships. For now, Carney is campaigning to undo Trudeau's foreign policy disaster and rebuild Canada's relationship with India from scratch. With Rhythm Arcadia, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio flew out of Homestead Air Reserve Base in Florida on Sunday evening. The U.S. State Department says Rubio is going to Saudi before visiting Canada. U.S. President Donald Trump, meanwhile, said on Sunday that the U.S. officials will meet delegations from Russians and Ukraine in Saudi Arabia this week to discuss ending the war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, China's top political advisory body held its closing meeting Monday morning in Beijing. The Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference came to an end with President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang seen at the meeting with over 2,000 delegates. Now, for your perspective, the delegates' positions are largely ceremonial. They voted Monday to pass a series of resolutions on a work report of the Standing Committee of the CPPCC National Committee on a report about how to handle proposals from political advisors and also a report on the examination of new proposals. U.S. President Donald Trump on board Air Force One on Sunday said tariffs are going to be the greatest thing we've ever done as a country and are going to, in fact, make the U.S. rich again. Now, Trump's comments were made in response to a question about Americans who are concerned about the economic fallout of the tariffs and declining stock prices. Trump also said he will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping at some point, adding the two have had a very good relationship. He also said he expects Ukraine to sign a deal on minerals with the United States. Meanwhile, Trump criticized Ukraine's approach to peace talks with Russia, saying, I want them to want peace right now. Right now, they haven't shown it to the extent that they should. Russia on Sunday announced that its forces had controlled several settlements, while the Ukrainian side reported engaging in battles with Russian forces in multiple places. According to a statement released by the Russian Ministry of Defense on Sunday, its troops had seized, in fact, control of several settlements in the Kursk region. The Russian television channel RT, or Russia Today, in fact, released a video clip claiming that Russian military captured a US-made Abrams tank in the Kursk region. The Russian forces also took control of settlement in Sumy region and the Donetsk region. On the same day, the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported that its forces had in fact engaged in battles with Russian forces in the direction of Kursk, Kharkiv, Kupiansk and Pokrovsk. Syria's interim president has responded to the country's worst violence in months, denouncing those trying to quote-unquote drag our country to a civil war and vowing to crack down on those responsible. Ahmad al-Shara's address follows days of clashes between Syrian security forces and insurgents of the minority Alawite community loyal to the deposed Bashar Assad government in Syria's coastal province. Some rights groups even say hundreds of civilians, mostly Alawite, were killed in revenge attacks after the fighting in fact broke out. The AP could not independently verify those numbers. Al-Shara announced the formation of a committee tasked with investigating the violence in coastal communities, including violations against civilians, and another one tasked with maintaining civil peace.
An ambush attack that killed over a dozen Syrian security forces near the coastal city of Latakia quickly turned into the worst fighting that Syria has seen since its 13-year civil war. The surprise attack by Alawite gunmen loyal to former President Bashar al-Assad and the government's counter-offensive derailed any efforts to bring about a semblance of security and political calm to Syria under its interim Islamist rule.
Jordan hosted a meeting on Sunday with officials from Syria's neighboring countries to discuss security, reconstruction, and the voluntary return of Syrian refugees. The meeting was attended by the foreign and defense ministers, chiefs of staff, and intelligence directors from Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Turkey, and Jordan. Cooperation on regional and security challenges such as cross-border drugs and arms smuggling and even combating terrorism was discussed. The Jordanian Foreign Ministry confirmed in a statement afterwards that the meeting would focus on supporting the reconstruction of Syria to preserve its unity and stability. Over in Greenland, voters are preparing to head to the polls this week to elect the 31 members of the country's legislative body. The main issues in the March 11 vote are expected to be independence from Denmark and their relationship with the US after Donald Trump's comments about wanting to take over the territory. A former colony of Denmark, Greenland gained self-rule in 1979 and now runs itself through its parliament. Since taking office 6 weeks ago, Trump has repeatedly expressed his interest in Greenland, a huge mineral-rich island that sits along strategic sea lanes in the North Atlantic. Meanwhile, chaos broke out in Romania's capital Sunday evening as incensed supporters of the far-right populist Justin protested the electoral body's decision to in fact reject his candidacy in a presidential election redo. Now, Justin won the first round of the last year's race before a top court annulled the election. The 62-year-old Justin, in fact, filed his candidacy on Friday in the capital, Bucharest. The Central Election Bureau, also known by its Romanian acronym BEC, had 48 hours to register or reject it. It wasn't immediately clear on what grounds was his candidacy rejected, but the BEC said that a full text of its decision would be later published on its website. Now, the decision can be appealed at the Constitutional Court within 24 hours. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese questioned the fallout from a vicious tropical storm over the weekend was far from over as parts of 2 states remained inundated with perilous floodwaters on Monday, even as the initial threat from the deluge continued to recede. 1 person has been killed and several others injured after heavy rain lashed Australia's east coast on Saturday, toppling trees and power lines and even inundating some parts of Queensland and New South Wales with record downpours. Now, workers whose livelihoods were hampered by the storm will be eligible for welfare payments for up to 13 weeks beginning Tuesday, Prime Minister Albanese told reporters on Monday. Constantina belly hauls herself across the floor and into a pool where she swims back and forth. It was less than 2 months since she was found orphaned and struggling on rocks off the coast of southern Greece. Now, Constantina is one of dozens of Mediterranean monk seals, or monachus, to have been nursed back to health and released into the wild by Greece's MOM, a charity organization dedicated to the self-care and care and protection, of rare marine mammals whose population had dwindled so dramatically that at one point it faced extinction. Seals like Constantina are enjoying a remarkable comeback thanks to conservation efforts. Nearly half its estimated current global population of 800 individuals live in Greek waters, where sea caves provide shelter for females, in fact, to rear their young.